So we were both right about the amount. Yeah. Is he, Neil, if you're going to cause trouble, you're going to have to sit by Rabbi Light, but Rabbi Light didn't do anything to deserve that punishment. Okay, are we on? So welcome to anybody that is online. I am hoping that Joel is there and will make his comments and questions because it's not a class without Joel. Okay, so please feel free if you're watching online to type in your questions and Mark will relay them to us. So welcome everybody here. If you have not got one, here is Psalm 27, that it's a different translation than the one that's in the Machzor. It's would have just got it now. Myra, you can, if you need one. Okay. So as you know, I'm pretty informal about teaching. So the only rule is we try not to talk over each other. So when I was thinking about what to do, there were a number of things that went into my head. I wanted to do something. Rabbi, a couple of Shabbatot or on Zoom, I think, did something on being fully present in the moment. And in the past, I've always talked about Ne'ilah. Okay, I want us to do something here that's going to help us at the end of the service. And then I wanted to take that moment from Ne'ilah and bring it towards Sukkot, Shemini Atzeret, Yizkor, Simchat Torah, so that it's a powerful moment that connects all the holidays. So, and it's a really hard time to teach because everybody's tired. It's not as hard as their job at Ne'ilah. I don't know how anybody stands up and does stuff at Ne'ilah, but I really wanted to help. And the other thing is I am really more than grateful and honored and awestruck that I get to be learning with you guys today. If you remember last year I came, I hadn't been here in a while. I sat here and I missed it and I didn't know what was ahead of me. So I asked Neil, our ritual chair, because I did get a chance to ask Rabbi Sachs, but I'd like to kind of start with the Shehachiyanu. Oh, Rabbi Sachs, hi. Is it okay if I start with the Shehachiyanu? Okay. So if you'll recite with me, I'm not going to sing it because I don't really have that ability like Rabbi Light, but I don't know if I can do it. I have to sing it. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehecheyanu v'kimanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehecheyanu v'kimanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. Amen. Okay, so we only have a short time, and I've planned different things, but I do want to give, and I would have said that even if he hadn't walked in the room, but one of the character strengths we talked about was humility. Oh, here is the handout if you need. And like we were talking about before, learning Torah portions, everything, most of the information and the sources I got to develop this teaching, I got from Rabbi Sachs. So I want to thank him. He thought that the study of Psalm 27 would take the idea I said to you before about having that moment in Ne'ilah, a powerful moment, then taking it to Sukkot, Simchat Torah, all of that. So I'm not going to give you a history of Psalm 27 yet. If we need to, I will if it comes up. I have, like Brenda pointed out, 27 pages of notes. Okay. But I want us to read it and I want to hear your wisdom and where you want to go with it. Okay. And so I'll go ahead and read it since I'm at the mic and it'll be easier for YouTube. So, and this is a translation by, I can't even say it. Dr. Rabbi Raphael Goldstein Zal, who I had the pleasure, I don't know if it was always pleasure of meeting him through Rabbi Sachs. He was an amazing human being who teased a lot. That's why I say sometimes it wasn't pleasant to me. So this is the psalm. To David, God is my light and my help. Whom should I fear? The Holy One is the strength of my life. Whom should I dread? When mean-spirited people draw me near to slander me, it is these foes and enemies who stumble and fall. Should an army surround me, my heart would have no fear. Should war come upon me, I would still feel secure. Only one thing I ask of God, only this do I seek, to dwell in the house of the Holy One all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of God, and to pay attention in God's sanctuary. The Holy One will shelter me in God's sukkah. On a bad day, the Holy One will hide me in the shelter of God's tent, raise me up safely on a rock. Now is my head high above enemies surrounding me. I sacrifice in God's tent with shouts of joy, singing, and chanting a song to God. God, hear my voice when I call. Be gracious to me. Answer me. To you, my heart says, seek my face. Oh God, I seek your face. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your nose from your servant. You have always been my help, so do not forsake me. Do not abandon me, my God, my saving power. Even if my father and mother abandoned me, the Holy One would take me in. Teach me your ways, O God, and guide me on a level path because of my watchful enemies. Do not hand me over to the will of my foes, for false witnesses and unjust accusers have appeared against me, breathing violence. If only I could believe, I will yet see the Holy One's goodness while I am alive. Hope in the Holy One, be strong inside, and let your heart be brave. Hope in the Holy One. Thoughts as we look at this psalm? Any thoughts when you read it? Any words? Any ideas? Myra.
I know it's to David. Who's it from?
Myra, that's an excellent question. There's a lot of scholarship on it, and I'm going to look at my notes. And Rabbi, please, either Rabbi Light, or well, they attribute it some attribute it to King David, that he did write it because he was in the midst of foes. Right, but a lot of the Psalms were written. I don't know how to explain that. You want to jump in?
The tradition says that King David wrote all the Psalms. That's almost certainly not the case. But that is what tradition says. The lith, that's translated as two, can also be, it's a little unclear if it means two or four, or exactly what it means. So it could be that it was assigned to David, or it was from that. It can mean that David wrote it. But those inscriptions were added hundreds of years after the psalm was written. Or really, even the to David is not really part of the original. Yeah.
Excellent question, Myra. Excellent.
That's a great question.
There are books and books of scholarship on it. Okay, just on that. That's how people, when they look and learn about a psalm, they do what we're doing now and look at it and look at different things and get people's input. Any other thoughts that come to mind? Troy.
So I see an arc that kind of goes through the whole psalm. In the beginning, the psalmist starts off very certain, with a very unshakable confidence, and almost like a blind confidence, like a blind belief almost. But then the psalmist around verse kind of towards the middle. Something happens that kind of shakes the psalmist.
Right.
And then towards the end, there's a mention twice of hope, and the psalmist didn't abandon belief or hope in God, but the unshakable confidence is not there anymore. It's a more iffy situation.
Okay, excellent. So Troy talked about the first, and actually there's scholarship on that too, Troy, that the first part, the faith, the belief in God is very strong and confident. And then something happens, or we think, and it kind of gets that doubt, that unshakableness. And then the third part, or that unshakable tense to it. Like, I'm not so sure about this anymore. And then it ends kind of on a note of hope. Okay. But it's not going back to the original, I'm so confident nothing can happen. Okay. Excellent. Mark?
And Joe said, in number 4, that when you're not, he did not dwell, but the earned the right to do that.
Ooh, okay. So Joel added that it's not just dwell in verse 4, but it's to earn the right to be in the house of Holy One. Excellent, Joel, as always. Thank you. So there's a lot. Anybody else? Rabbi, are you? I like you say when you're on the Bema teaching, I see something brewing back there, Rabbi. Okay.
Yeah, well, sing in the light of your frame, it's almost like the first part of the psalm, where it's very confident, is what we hope to feel during the coming year. And what we hope that we get out of the High Holy Days. But then we actually have to do the work. And we can't, and that work involves not hiding. And of course, the psalmist frames it as asking God not to hide. But where has the psalmist been with God?
Right.
Maybe it is projection, right? That the psalmist has been hiding, not God, right? And then at the end is the catharsis that brings this psalmist to hope that the High Holy Days have provided such a spiritual grounding and movement, inner movement for the psalmist that they can proceed with the rest of the year into Sukkot with this more hopeful, grounded way that their joy will be even more joyous because they've had this catharsis of Bible.
I like that. I really like that. That, I think the start of a new year, if I say anything, you can change, is when you feel, you have hopeful and faith and everything's good. And then when you think about a lot that Rabbi talked about today is you have to do the work. And that can kind of bring down that hopefulness, that confidence. Oh, I really have to go tell so-and-so I'm sorry, or I really have to work on changing my behavior. That's hard work. How am I going to do it? And then the third part is, well, I can do it. It's going to be mixed, kind of what Tori, what you said with your faith in God. It's not all little Mary sunshine. There's going to be things, but with God, my hope in that is I can do it, or with our community. I always feel a sense of hope here when we all do Havdalah together at the end. When we're all together and the community feels good, it feels like it's powerful that I can do this, that I can help. Other thoughts? Irene?
Well, to me, in many ways, it reads maturation of life. That when you're young, everything seems to be fine until you have been, I guess, taken down a few notches a few times. And that in that maturation, it's also about an internal strength for me. And it's that the strength that you have has to come from inside.
Right.
It can't be something that you're given, but rather something that you have to develop, and that as you go forward in that development, you learn that there are trials and tribulations until you get to the point of humility.
Right.
And I think humility, maintaining humility and strength, they've always been my favorite people, is the people who I see as very strong and very humble.
Excellent.
And with those things coming together.
I like that. And I like as you describe it as an internal, that it's a maturation in how you really develop in yourself. And I don't think it's separate from what Troy's also talking about, right? Because that sometimes that internal growth can be our relationship with God and our belief in God. You know, I tell you guys the story all the time. When I first came here, yes, I had a master's in Jewish education, but I'm not so sure I had a relationship or belief in God. I could teach it. I could tell you all the names that we have for God. I could tell you what this and that, but I hadn't experienced it. And Lois was one of those people that taught me that a faith in God is beyond anything. Okay. Like you, and it develops over time. Okay. So I think that's very powerful. And that's also something that can take you from Ne'ilah, whether you're having a conversation with yourself at Ne'ilah, whether you're having a conversation with HaShem, whether you're having a conversation with whoever's sitting next to you, hopefully not, because I would never talk while the rabbi's talking. Not me. Okay. 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 We've got to do some extra Hashem knew, but God knew. But that you're in, yes.
I'll just take the doors of the ark off.
Off, and I'll just stand there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know when I stepped in that river crossing that sea, that it was going to come back. Okay. But that whatever it is, you're finding something inside yourself and not dwelling in the past. If it was a tough year, it was a tough year. Okay. I could all look at you and say, not a year I want to repeat. Okay. In a lot of ways, but a lot of ways, what I've gained, what I know, what I have inside, what I have with my relationship with Hashem, if you let it, then I'd repeat that. I want to strengthen that. I want to find a different way to do it. You know, but when you read Neil, yes.
Well, first of all, a lot of psalms sound alike.
Okay.
They all have similar themes and similar wordings and similar phrases. But one thing I notice in this particular psalm is there's not a whole lot of pleas going on.
Ooh.
It's more directing God to help and recognizing that God will help. But this one there's no pleas anywhere in here. There's also no, a lot of the Psalms end with praise. This one doesn't have that either. It says, hope in the Holy One.
Okay.
At least that's one translation, but there's no praise. So there's no pleas.
Right.
There's no real praise in here. So what does that mean?
Right. So I'm, for those live streaming, in case you couldn't hear Neil, that it's different than a psalm, and Neil will correct me if I get, that there's no please, there's no please, there's no praise. It's describing more of saying, I'm going to do this, you'll do this kind of thing. It's more of a relationship kind of, in a way.
God will shelter me.
Right. God will
I'm
do
not
this.
saying, God, please shelter me.
So it's more of a confidence that I know God will shelter me. I don't have to get on my knees and say, please shelter me. Okay. Very powerful. Very powerful. Other thoughts? Troy?
I noticed in verse 10, it was talking about even if my father and mother abandoned me. And it made me think about what Irene was saying about how it's kind of like life, the whole general course of one's life. You know, you start out young, you think you're invincible, and you always, you know, the most permanent thing when you're young in your life is your mom and dad. For most of us. Like, I know for me, that's like, you know, the most permanent thing that I can think of. But I know in my mind that one day they will be gone and that I won't have that space of permanence to go off of. It's going to have to be from in here. Hopefully they imparted something of value to me, but yeah, it's going to come from in here. And it's not going to come from outside of me, but it has to come from within me. And and going off with that, I was reading in a book and was talking about Rosh Hashanah is almost like a rebirth. It's like the birthday of the world. So the time between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is really like a snapshot of all of life. You're born on Rosh Hashanah. You know, you're being watched over the 10 days. Everything you do matters, supposedly. During the 10 days, well, that's life. Everything in life matters. Nothing in life doesn't matter, according to Judaism. And then you die on Yom Kippur. You know, it's like a death rehearsal. So it's like all of life in 10 days.
In 10 days. And this talks about, and you said something powerful that I'm relating to Rabbi kind of said in Yisker. He said it much more elegantly than I'm going to say, but it's not just about us. We're part of a chain. We have those that came before us and those that will come after us. And hopefully what Rabbi asked us the question, what will you impart? You know, what will be that? And this is, it's a lot in here too. Like, what do you impart? You had your permanence. You had this. Now you have to take responsibility. And eventually you're going to die. How is it that those moments are going to count in between? You know, and how does God fit into that? Very cool. Okay. Any other? Cliff?
Yeah, I'm getting like a hit on a theme here. And it strikes me that almost a war, military, or I see pleas in here. Like Neil said, but so in terms of war, fear, dread, enemies, enemies again. He talks about being abandoned. I feel it's almost like anxiety. My watchful enemies. I feel like there's something quite desperate.
Excellent. Excellent. I was, you know, there's lots of words that repeat. And for those of you online, Cliff talked about that the theme kind of war repeats. There's fear, there's enemies. What else did you say, Cliff? What? There's violence. Okay. And so what does that mean to people? If that's a theme in there, what does it mean? Like Rabbi Light.
Yeah, so jumping off what Cliff said, and I was also going to kind of comment on Neil's that I also saw this sense. There are two places in the psalm that you do get the speaker of the psalm is pleading, right? First he pleads for God's presence, and then he pleads for to seek God's face. And yet those are like you first have the sense that there is this harsh world that the author is steeling himself or herself against, and kind of playing between how confident do I have to kind of face the world because it's a nasty world out there versus how much can I let down my guard and be vulnerable. And there's kind of that seeking God's presence is kind of an expression of vulnerability. And then immediately the psalmist goes back and says, almost like, no, but I have to steel myself because I can't, if I open myself too much, I'll be attacked. I'm always kind of like trying to shore off the enemies. So it's almost like, how much does confidence get in the way of my ability to kind of express the real me and, and make the distance of my relationship between God and me, get it closer in some sense. So I sense like this, like the psalmist really asking this question of how much does my confidence get in the way of the true me, of being able to kind of expose me and thus kind of make an authentic relationship with God.
I like that, and I'm not going to do it justice. So YouTube streamers, but it's that it's confidence in engaging in life, in the vulnerability. Like, how vulnerable can I be before I get consequences for being vulnerable? And then how does God play into that, and how does that do it? And then it goes with the war things, because when you're in your head too much sometimes, and you see the world not as this nice, wonderful place, but maybe a dangerous, kind of scary place, everybody can feel like an enemy. If I expose myself emotionally to somebody and they put it all over Facebook, that's a war. But even with a good friend, how much do I do it? How much do I really let people know that, I'm not confident right now? What's going to happen if I say, I really am not confident in my ability to do this? What's going to happen? Or even more so. So I really like that, Rabbi Light. Would you add anything to what I said?
I just say there's a strange, almost, there's the same strange circularness that the more confident we feel, the more vulnerable we get, the more vulnerable and open we get, it exposes us to kind of those forces that kind of make us long for the confidence that we can, so it's like this very cyclical.
That is. It's very cyclical, and it goes along almost what you were saying, Troy, too, is, I'm starting out. I had my comfort of my family. I'm starting out. Okay, I have this new life. It's great. I'm confident. I'm whatever. Then how can I be vulnerable? Do I have to pull in? Something's going to happen. Life is not linear. Rabbi has taught us all that you just, everything's good and it keeps getting better and better and better. We all know that that's not life. Mark.
Joel also said this might be a reflective thought where God loves me, but do I love God enough?
Ooh, Joel. Okay, so Joel said, God may it's a reflective thought that God may love me, but do I love God enough? Okay. What I can put it on that I don't think God likes me, but really it's here. Okay. It's internal. Do I love God enough? Am I doing the work? We've talked about it a lot today, forgiving. And Joel also said that, if I'm willing to forgive, if I want forgiveness, the willing to forgive and receive forgiveness is intertwined. You have to be willing to do one and also receive another person's forgiveness. Troy?
It seems like inevitably, as you go through life, the more life you live, the more broken your heart becomes, because you experience tragedy after tragedy and you just get broken down. And God is close to the broken heart. So yes, maybe you don't have the same confidence, but you have a broken heart from life, and that allows God's presence to be within you, to dwell within you.
Right. So if you have a broken heart and God's presence dwells within you, how then is it hopeful? How do you get the hope? I don't want people leaving here like thinking, oh, life is going to be hard. Okay. That's just all Fran taught. And life is going to be hard. You're going to have a broken heart. And, I could have a faith in God, but, it's going to be hard. And I'm not saying that's what you said. Okay. That's my thing. what, how,
In this psalm, it says, God is my light and my help. And then the number 9, my saving power. Another word for that is salvation. So some people say, well, with God, anything is possible. Everything is possible. So God is my help. And, broken heart, fine. God helps.
God helps. You have to have that relationship for God help.
Right.
Right. Ira, I said,
Going through life and learning how to dance, experiencing, the ups and downs and experiencing life. Hello.
Right.
Experiencing life. But basically, we all, I assume, and I know I'm not the only one, we know that prayer works. Period. We know that prayer works. We get up, all of a sudden, boom, it hits you, prayer works, and those warmongers or those shooters or whoever those bad people are, they're gone. They're gone. I know you don't know that.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? And this poem again, kind of like, hello, open the door.
Myra, you said something really powerful. Okay. Prayer does work. It may not work in the way we always want it, or we think it should, that, we talked a lot in one of the books that we did in the Significant Book Club, a Kushner's book, about, prayer and hope and things. And it doesn't mean that if I pray that I win the lottery the next time, that I'm going to win the lottery. Okay. We all get that. But prayer works, I believe, and I think this says it, because it changes us internally. We don't feel alone. We have somebody to talk to. It helps us make different choices in life. It does more than just God grants our wishes. I mean, the example, go ahead, Myra.
I'm not saying making wishes. I'm not putting.
Right.
I'm not putting soul.
Right. That's what
I'm not looking for music that changes our perceptions, which in turn changes, grants us salvation.
Excellent. Myra said it changes our perception, which then grants us our salvation, our help in God. And Myra, you are spot on. Okay. Because prayer is really no different. We were talking before the class about mindfulness and meditation and the calm app and different things. When you choose to and allow yourself to really dive in, to really have that moment that I'm hoping that everybody can have a bit at Ne'ilah. When you choose to do it, it can't be Rabbi Light and it can't be Rabbi Sachs creating that moment for you. You can't leave here tonight and say, well, I could have had a moment, but those rabbis, boy, were they off at the end. Okay. It's not their responsibility. They still could be off. Okay. I say, okay. The responsibility is in each of us. How much are you willing to take a risk, maybe, and put your talit over your head so that you can get in that space? How much are you willing to sit quietly for that moment? Okay. It's hard at the end of Yom Kippur. It's like I say with bar and bat mitzvah kids, we ask them at the worst time in their lives and their family's worst time. 13-year-olds are not ready to be in public, okay, are not ready to interact with their parents, yet we do it. Yom Kippur afternoon and Ne'ilah, when a lot of us are thinking about how hungry we are, or how thirsty we are, or my legs hurt, or, why isn't this over? Or there are 3 stars out. That's an option you have. Or you can say, I'm going to trust in the rabbis and Brenda that I will have food at the end. And when Neil does the final shofar blast, I'll know services are over and I can eat. So I'm going to have a spiritual moment. You have to work at it. And right, Myra, that was spot on. Thank you. Mark.
Okay, what is it?
Okay.
To share a personal note from this week, I have good friends who had a baby last Monday with major complications.
Oh,
And the law prayer and good doctors, I think the reading this morning says, God gives us doctors and the learn to become good doctors. The baby came home today and probably okay.
wow.
Right. And that's, yep,
To go on with what I was saying. And also Joel says, grief opens a portal to heaven, but it's purposely temporary, and the door closes, grief is temporary.
so grief is temporary, right? Okay, Joel's right. Grief is, even though it feels like it's never going to get better. Okay, I used to tell clients all the time, you're not going to cry forever. Okay, I used to have clients that were afraid to start crying because they thought they'd cry forever. Okay, it's temporary. It feels like it's never going to end. Excellent, thank you. Brenda.
I think
Oh, let Brenda and then Irene.
And it's like, so what you're saying, and also what other people said, that it was very positive, the saying. And then there's one, number 9, when it says, do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your nose from your servant. You've always been my help. Do not forsake me. It's like, well, everything's been good and good, but, well, maybe something bad happened to me. And now you're forsaking me just for one little thing that didn't go right.
Mhm.
And all the rest I'm forgetting about.
Right.
Because I'm just dwelling now. And that's where we do a lot of that. I tend not to thank God for all the good things. But if one little bad thing happens, then we blame.
Right. So Joel and whoever else is there, Brenda, Brenda said it eloquently. And it is that if one thing happens, we blame God and we forget about all the good things. And we also don't thank God for those good things. And those of you that have watched me over the years and heard Rabbi say it, when I started studying the character strengths, the first one I did was gratitude. And I guarantee you, okay, and I don't guarantee much, if you do it correctly, if you start at night listing 3 things you were grateful for, and it has to be 3, okay? 3 things you were grateful for that day, and then you start the next morning also with a sense of gratitude, it changes your brain chemistry. It changes the way you do it. I guarantee you. Okay? You can't just try it one day. Okay? You have to keep trying it because then you're open for that relationship. Okay? That doesn't mean that everything's great. Okay? And some days it's going to be very hard. You'll be grateful for, what was one day? I was grateful for my blanket, my bed, and my pillow one day. Okay? Because I was in pain. I wasn't home. I was facing chemo. I was facing this. Couldn't find anything, but I did. My pillow, my whatever. Okay? And if you surround yourself with this community, and I will tell you, CAH is that community you can do it with, or other people in your life that support that, you can still have that moment of life is horrible, but then they help you support back to what you're grateful for. Okay? And it's really, really powerful. And if you can do that at Ne'ilah tonight, I really want you to think, I want you to pay attention, but I know all of you are not davening and paying attention 100% of the time, except for Rabbi Sachs and Rabbi Light. They're always paying attention up there, okay? I had to get a good one in. But when your mind starts to wander, Rabbi Sachs has created some thoughts on the stapled handout that you can look at, but also list 3 things you're grateful for. 3 things today that you're grateful for. And it can't be in the future, the food you're going to eat, okay? I want you to dig a little bit deeper, okay? And one of those for all of you can be a mind that wants to learn. Because I know some of you are thinking, well, I can't think about that, or I didn't add to the discussion, or I whatever. you're here. You're here on a break of Yom Kippur learning. Okay? You have a desire to learn. And somebody will say to you, well, I just wanted to support you. No, you came and you wanted to learn. Do I know all of you? I gotcha. Okay. Okay. So really think about that. Irene.
It's a conversation Troy and I had earlier. I think the challenge is not only to get up and be thankful and to go. I mean, I think that's I'm going to do that.
Right.
Since you've mentioned it, it's a good exercise. But I think the challenge, and Troy and I had an earlier discussion during the break, and I think this is always the challenge. Troy said, I used to be a caretaker of elderly people. He said, it was my first job out of high school, and I wouldn't have traded it for anything because of what I learned.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that situation could be so trying and so difficult, and particularly for a young person to identify with this impossible situation or challenging situation. But I really want to say it the way I feel it. It's an impossible situation. And for him to come away and say, it is such a wonderful thing that happened to me. I think this is always our challenge. With anything bad that happens, I think the challenge is to say, what is it in that thing? When someone dies, if you don't like them, if you do like them, if you do like them, it's a different situation, but if you didn't like them, your challenge always is to find, what did they teach you? What was it in their character that somehow you had this relationship to come to this funeral, to take away from them, to make you a better person?
Right. Excellent.
Even if it was their anger that you didn't want to be like them.
Right. I think
you how not to be.
Right. You can learn from what can you learn from that situation in a way? What can you take away? It's not just learning a fact. It's how does it affect me, that inner being, that, what I like to say, our neshama, our soul, okay? That God gave it. How does that affect?
And your job is also to see that in a way that you can grow from that.
Right. That you can, and it may take a while. Irene said it, and your job is to see what you can grow from it and take away from that. And that's not always easy. Okay. It's really not always easy, and it won't happen right away. Okay. I don't expect, Brenda right now to be able to say, well, from Roz's death, I've learned this and I'm okay and I'm okay. Okay. That's why Judaism has some beautiful rituals and halakha if we follow them. The year of mourning gets us to do that. I'm back in life, it's Shiva's over. Okay, Shloshim's over. How do I heal? How do I take my brokenness? How God is there? What do I do with it? Rabbi and I have talked a lot about, we had a couple of survivors in our synagogue in Arcadia. And survivors to me have the right to be whoever they are. Okay. They went through a horrific experience that I couldn't even imagine. And we had we had brothers. We had a pair of brothers that chose not to be bitter and not to stay away from a synagogue. They went through a phase, especially one of them went through a phase where it was hard. It was difficult. But Paul in particular, Paul Lubo would say to me, he wanted to teach the kids how to put on tefillin or interact with the kids or do something, because it made him, in a way, say to the Nazis, I won. Okay, we won. And it takes a little bit of that pain away for a second, when a kid smiles at him and says, that was really cool. Okay. And that's always our choice. That's always, our synagogue as a whole is going through a transition year. Okay. This is a transition year for us. We have a choice. Do we want to say, oh, life is hard, nothing's good? How are we going to make best of everything? Okay. There's a lot that we're going to be challenged this year. So we have to decide as a community how we want to do that. Okay. The year is going to hold so many things. Hold on 1 minute. Anybody else have something before I let Troy? Because I want to give everybody a chance. No fingers? Okay, Troy.
I wanted to share a personal detail about me. So in my prayer life, I've noticed a shift. So I've always kind of been a spiritual woman. And I hardly ever ask for anything anymore. And I'm not saying that it's like, oh, look at me, I don't ask for anything. Do I need things? Yeah. And I do ask for things, of course. I like to believe that God hears me and will give me what I need. But at the same time, I've noticed I just don't really ask for a lot of things anymore because I don't know, it just makes me feel very fulfilled to sometimes, when I daven or something, I just stand there and I just go down all the things I'm grateful for, I'm just like, thank you for this and thank you for that. Oh, and thank you for that. Oh, and that reminds me of this, thank you for that, thank you for that. And it just makes me think of like, wow, God is so present to me all the time in my life. If I just open my eyes,
It makes you more, Troy said, he doesn't ask for things more. He would want things, and there are things, and he doesn't want to put himself out that, everything's great and perfect. But it's almost he's grateful for what he has. And it's a whole different feeling when you're not desperate and needing and you can be grateful for. There's a whole thing. And it's hard to do. It's hard to do. There's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you don't have a house, you can't get there. Okay. If you're not having certain things, Maslow's hierarchy of needs show it's hard to really think about spiritual needs. But gratitude has kind of changed that, I'm grateful for. Yeah. And that's what prayer's about too. The Berchot HaShachar, when we start off with that tefillah, it seems simple things like, really thank you, God, for helping me wake up. Okay. It's a miracle that we wake up. If you think about it, okay, if you've ever been really sick and you wake up the next day, wow, thank you. Okay. Thank you for giving me strength. Thank you for a whole lot of things. Okay. And that's the thing. That's where you have to get in that zone. It's your choice. And if you can learn it, even for when I was studying mindfulness a number of years ago, I used to say to this person that I was studying with, I could never do this. Okay. Because I'm not going to be happy for everything, every moment of my life. And he would laugh at me and he'd say, that's not what it's about. That's not what this psalm is about. This psalm is about having a mature relationship with God where things are going to be rough. Okay. Things are, they're going to run out of Reese's peanut butter cups, Ruthie, at the store one day, and I'm going to be upset. That's going to be rough. But I'll pray to God and maybe, I'll find something else. Okay. Or I'll say, I don't need chocolate today. Doesn't happen. Don't worry, Ruthie. The Ruth is not, okay. But that's, there has to be something consistent and you have to be open. Okay. It's really important to have some sort of belief in a higher power. If not God, if you can't call it God, you have to have something outside of yourself. Okay, Rabbi, were you saying something? Okay, I thought, yeah.
No, I appreciate the discussion with Rich. And I think that the one thing that for the psalmist is constant is the psalmist's sense of God's place and presence in the psalmist's life.
Yeah.
That there are things that are not rosy all the time. I also want to say that I don't know that I think that the enemies of the psalm are necessarily actually external people. I actually, sometimes when I read the psalmist, I actually read things like enemies as being internal forces. That, that saying that we can be our own worst enemies. I think that may be, at least especially in this psalm, seems to be so internal. Because this does not seem to be some sort of historical kernel that this is a soldier of war.
Right.
Who wrote this psalm.
Right.
It seems to be just, and so I sort of feel like when we read them as, what are the forces in me that gravitate toward poor choices, that gravitate toward self-medicating, that gravitate toward whatever it is. And it is the only when the psalmist takes action and says, I would like to tell you to seek my face, but the truth is, I'm going to seek yours. And stop waiting around for the benevolence, for relying on the kindness of strangers, as Tennessee Williams would say, or wait around for God to be doing it for you as if it's an entitlement coming to you. It's at that point where the psalmist says, I'm actually, whether it really you actually seek my face or not, I'm going to seek yours, I think is a significant point. Not that life doesn't zigzag, but when we get into the zone, that part of relationship with God is actually tending to our own garden. I think that we make a lot of progress.
And I'm on that note, so I hope that you find a way, all of us, to get there, hopefully by Neela, but even in that Neela moment, get in that internal space. Okay, not really rabbis. You can't get in that internal space. It's hard. Okay, when you're leading, but everybody else really get there and reach and try and make this a Ne'ilah moment that will easily go to Sukkot, Yizkor, Shmini Atzeret, Simchat Torah, and then we'll work on the rest of the year later. Okay, but at least get it through Simchat Torah. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You are a community of learners.
Yasher called for Fran, really called for both. What a beautiful session this was. And I know I